Hey guys, this is Salamander Anagram with MachineSkills.com, and today I'm going to do a video on using liquid notes with Maschine, and along the way we'll talk about using Maschine to import and export MIDI files. If you like this tutorial, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, coming out with 2 or 3 new Maschine videos every week. So Liquid Notes is, as far as I know, a pretty unique piece of software. It operates entirely on MIDI files and analyzes their harmonic content and allows you to manipulate it pretty easily. So with that in mind, it operates best on MIDI files that are easy to analyze. So I've created just a very simple basic loop here to show off some of the simpler functions of Liquid Notes. So this is really simple. As you can see, it's 1 bar repeated 4 times. I made it in about 3 minutes, as you can hear. Alright, so the bass is playing an A note at the beginning of each bar, the pads are playing an A minor chord, and the mallet is playing a melody in the A minor scale. So all of this is harmonically related, and when we analyze it with Liquid Notes, we're going to be able to manipulate it very easily. And this is just a really basic idea of what you can do, but I've also loaded in some pretty extreme, like classical scores and other stuff into it, and it'll generally do pretty well with those as well. But just for the sake of keeping it simple, I'm gonna just use this very easy loop here. One thing to try to make sure of is to create a track that can be easily identified as playing chords, which makes the analysis much easier on Liquid Notes. And so we've done that with our pads that are playing an A minor at the beginning of every bar. To export MIDI, right-click on a group and select the Export MIDI option. However, right now we're in keyboard view, and this has given me problems. I'm not sure why, but whenever I switch out of it and export MIDI, I get a MIDI file with all of my tracks, and when keyboard view is on, I tend to get a MIDI file with only 1 track. So that's been my experience. So switch out of keyboard view and export the MIDI file. And this is convenient because MIDI has 16 channels and our groups have 16 slots, so you can have a slot for each MIDI channel, which is a convenient coincidence. Once we have our MIDI file, we can drop it into the open space in the Liquid Notes interface, select Other Sequencer, and it'll analyze the MIDI file and show us each track and what its function is. So we have a bass, a chords, and a melody here. It's pretty basic. And the next thing we have to worry about is the routing settings. So each one of these MIDI files that's playing back in Liquid Notes is going to be sending its information back to our program. And we have a bunch of different MIDI ports that we can choose, or we can send them all on the same MIDI port and send them via different channels, which is what we're going to do. So by default, these are all set up in a way that we can use them. We're going to send our bass on channel 1, our chords on channel 2, and our pads on channel 3. Our melody on channel 3. So let's go into Maschine and set all of these to receive MIDI from their respective ports. And you need to make sure that the given MIDI ports are set to active in the file properties of Maschine, which I've already done, so I'm not going to do it again, but you can do that in the audio and MIDI settings. And once we have that set up, we can click Next, and we'll get our final analyzed view of our MIDI file. So you can set the BPM down at the bottom here and turn looping on, and we'll make the loop take up the entire length of the MIDI file, so we can just keep listening to the same 4 bars if we need to. Alright, so basically we've just set it up so that Maschine will receive MIDI from Liquid Notes, and as we're editing the MIDI file, we can hear the results directly inside Maschine, which is pretty cool. I really wish that the integration was a little tighter inside Maschine so that we could have this sort of functionality in Maschine itself without having to route information from another program, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. And if we change to the piano roll view here, we can get a view of our MIDI as we edit it. So to edit our MIDI, we have a few different options available. We have the chord knob, we have the tension knob, which I'll talk about a little later, and we have the function slider, which is probably the easiest to use. So just by moving this function slider up from the tonic to the subdominant setting, we're going to change all of the MIDI data in this area from being in A minor to being in D minor. And you can also see the data change in the piano roll view. And by changing the chord knob, we can move away from the musically quote-unquote conventional to more unconventional, as far as music theory is concerned, types of setups. So we can easily just rearrange all of this data to give us a completely new chord arrangement. Once we have something we like, we can export it using the export MIDI function, and then we can use the import MIDI function inside of Maschine to load it back in. So I'm going to create a new pattern, and when we use the import MIDI function, the MIDI file will get loaded into the currently selected pattern. And we can add our drum file back in and take a listen. And of course, you don't need to make your own MIDI files. There's a wealth of them available online. Everything from Bach to Super Mario Brothers has been put out there by somebody already. And some of that stuff will work better than others. Like I said before, having chords in your MIDI file is definitely a plus, although I've used some files without chords, and some of them did all right, some of them didn't. It just depends. Alright, this is Salamander Anagram with MachineSkills.com. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you again next week.